My name is Dick, and I'm originally from suburb of Minneapolis, Fridley-Coon Rapids.
My name is Arla, and I am a retired teacher. I grew up in St. Cloud, Minnesota. My family was a very close-knit family, and I had an older brother, a twin sister, and a younger brother, and then mom and dad. My family was very involved in church. I think all of us were given many opportunities to attend church and be involved in church. So from the time I was very little, that was something that was important to me. I felt a part of rather than apart from, which was different than the story my husband expressed.
Family I grew up in was kind of a classic post-World War II. I had two brothers and myself. We were 1, 2, 3 in a row. Had an older sister, but she married and moved away out of state when we were only about 8 or 9. So it was really my two brothers and I. I was the youngest. I thought we had a fairly normal upbringing, although I'd have to say that as I got older, I realized that the family was pretty dysfunctional, and ultimately when I was in college, my parents divorced. My father was very hard person, not very loving, and ended up kind of verbally abusive to us boys, and so we didn't have a close relationship with him. We did with my mother when we were young until I got to be a teenager, and then, unlike my two brothers, I kind of got distracted and went wild and had some significant problems. My earliest memories of church were, I guess, kind of typical to even nowadays. What I remember is going to church, going to Sunday school, sitting around a table and coloring. It was pleasant, but it didn't mean much to me. That changed dramatically when my brothers and I became teenagers. I think 6 months from graduating from a confirmation class. And we came home and my mother asked us, well, what were you discussing? I said, well, it's kind of weird. They told us if we drank Coca-Cola or played cards, we would go to hell, and she just said, that's enough of that. So she just said, you guys do not have to go. If you want to go, we'll take you, but you do not have to go. Well, we were teenagers. We liked to hunt. We just scattered.
As a young adult, sometimes we feel like we want to break away from the religion of our childhood. So chapel services I didn't go to every day. Usually I went on Sundays, when we would have our church services then too. But there was also a lot more religion incorporated just even into our classwork, and I loved that. Went to Gustavus Adolphus where I met Dick.
That was the most scholarships I got, was to go to Gustavus. So that's how I ended up there. Well, I didn't do my homework when I got there. I realized this was like a church school. Okay. And I remember religion courses. And what I viewed those courses as they just pulled down my grade point average. So I was not receptive to the whole idea. But in college is where I met my wife, and she was very different from me.
Meeting Dick. He was exciting. In college and high school, I was a person who was very compliant. There were rules for a reason. You follow the rules. And so going into college, I'm sure I was a stick in the mud, so we were a bit of a contrast because the stories that he shared with me of those days in high school were pretty amazing, and I'm going like, ah! and yet he was fascinating. He was so intelligent and so neat and so fun, and we had great times together, and very early on in our relationship I knew that he was a special man. And I believed from the very beginning that that was a match made in heaven.
She was very spiritual, and church and religion was very important to her, but maybe that's what attracted me to her. She was what I wasn't. Maybe I would be a better person around her, and I thought that. Maybe some of her goodness would rub off on me.
We did get married, and we both decided to pursue our careers so that we could provide a foundation that was very firm for our family. And then we had our first child, and then the decision was that I would stay at home until the children got in school, and then I would go back to teaching.
In the beginning there, my self-determination and strong will seemed to be working very well. I got a very good job here in Eau Claire. The first few years, I've got promotion after promotion after promotion. We wanted to have a nice house, but we couldn't afford one. We had started a family, so I was the only person working outside the home. So we said, well, we can build it. So I'd work all day, and then I'd go out to the house, and I'm out there by myself wiring till midnight by myself. It worked. We did a lot of things ourselves, and we got the house built, at least livable, and started a family. And, you know, I seemed to be winning at the game of life. Well, then the pressures mount.
As time went on, what I found myself doing, unfortunately, is minimizing perhaps the God of my understanding and maximizing a demigod, which happened to be my husband.
Well, there's no room for God when you're playing God, and I realize now that that's where I was coming from. And unfortunately, the only thing I knew how to solve problems is you just have to attack them and overcome them yourself. And so I was doing that. And as time went on, other issues with partying and stuff, eventually it ruined our marriage.
I became very, very depressed. I ended up going the route of counselors, and counselors redirected me to an area where I could get some help from a fellowship of recovery that helped me understand where I ended and where he started. Having come back from a recovery meeting one evening, I was very mad at God. I thought I'd lived a righteous life. I thought I loved him with all of my heart, and why would this God hurt my children and myself this way? And I realized as a parent what that's like when your children say, "Mommy, I hate you." And here I was doing it to my Heavenly Father. But I also know of the unconditional love that he has in good times and in bad. And when I was so angry and pounding on my steering wheel, what is it you want me to understand that I've not learned yet? And what I knew is that the man that I love with all of my heart was emotionally and spiritually gone right now. And so, unbeknownst to any dream I'd ever had, our marriage of 23 years ended.
The marriage was 10 years over. The kids, when they came over, wouldn't talk much. I was alienated from my kids. The only thing I had left was this career, this job. And then they started eliminating my job. What I always did was, okay, we have a sharp mind, we got to think of the problem, we got to think of solutions and take some actions, and we will solve this problem. So I would do that, and at the very end, the actions I took made the problem worse than had I done nothing. And even I realized that. So we call that the jumping off point. Right at the very end there, what really prompted it is Arla's dad. I was very close to him.
During that 10-year hiatus, my dad was very involved. My mother had passed away by this time. He was being a surrogate father to our children, and Dad was coming for Thanksgiving along with my extended family.
I got together with the family, and he came up to me, and he latched on to me, and he said, "I just want you to know you'll always be my son, and I'll always love you." And I didn't know what to say to that. Unconditional love. After a few more times, I participated in events with him, and we reconnected, and then he died suddenly. And that got to a point where I couldn't sleep anymore. I just was all done. One morning, after I keep saying it was, I was hallucinating from lack of sleep. I had 3 days and 2 nights with no sleep. And at 5 a.m, I'm sitting on a curb. Sun is coming up, and I'm just lost it. And I finally, to a God I didn't believe in, I said, what do you want me to do? And what I heard was help my family.
That was a real turning point then, because I think Dick started to want to be more involved in our family gatherings.
Help my family, so that's what I interpreted as I started helping the family. I knew there was something else I had to do. And what that finally ended up being is substance abuse, and I said, okay, I guess I got to go start pursuing recovery. And as soon as I started recovery, the voices stopped. I started sleeping. So for me, that, I guess you'd call it a spiritual awakening, was the most profound event of my life. And that's when I went back to Trinity, and I started hearing that message at Trinity.
May our faith be strengthened and our lives renewed.
What we really needed to do is to work on ourselves. Otherwise, there would be nothing new to bring to a relationship. And we did that readily for the first 3 years of his recovery. And then there was another 2 years. And by this time, we realized that the love might have flickered a little bit, but it was there on the part of both of us. And this man that I had known all along was there, had returned, but even better. Now he had a spiritual side to him that I'd really missed seeing before. And so we went to our kids and said, hey, Mom and Dad are thinking of getting married. And they were going, what?
I am still always amazed at the grace, the free grace, as long as you open the door. God, for me, God couldn't open the door, but I had to get to where I was desperate enough. I just had to ask. I said, God help me.
I love that.
When you've been given a second chance, as I have, to not only have the marriage I'd always wanted, but also to go from the God of my understanding as a child to the God of my understanding as an adult, the love and the presence and the welcoming spirit, to be a person who could live holy. And that's with WH, and it's also with H. My Holy Father, my Heavenly Father, will lead me where I need to go in going out and to live a complete life. That's hopeful. That's for everybody, not just for me.
It is still so powerful for me today is when communion is served, and whoever is serving communion, especially the pastors, when the little child comes up and that gentle hand on the head and the kind, soft-spoken blessing, that's what I felt when it occurred. And so this concept of we are all God's children, especially me, that was very comforting to me. And that's kind of what I felt, was that gentle hand on my head with that blessing. And I'm fine with that. It completely changed my entire life, the whole basis for my life, and really all my relationships, which is a good thing.